The United States of America is a nation full to the brim with world-renowned cities. Cities of deep historical importance or cultural importance which attract thousands of tourists a year, or sometimes they're just famous simply because a film or TV show was set there. The USA being a huge melting pot of people and languages is reflected in the names of these cities too. These names come from a wide variety of origins. Some come from native languages of the land, while others derive from words and names of people who arrived in the land from other parts of the world. So let's look into how these world-renowned cities got their names. And something I need to clarify up top are the parameters in which I've chosen the cities in this video, or lack of parameters I ought to say. This video is primarily vibes based. I haven't found any kind of stat which dictates what cities I'll be covering, just the ones that felt right to me. This does mean that some states will have multiple cities covered in this video, while other states won't be highlighted at all. If you think somewhere doesn't deserve to be in this video, let me know. And conversely, if you think I forgot somewhere, fill me in on that too. And finally, if you think I've already made this video, that was just one on state capitals, but granted there will be some crossover between that video and this one. So let's start with what is probably the most famous city in the USA, and quite possibly the world, New York City, found in New York State. This is a name of British origins and is a reference to the Old York in England's north, but also more specifically in honour of the Duke of York in 1664, who would go on to become King James II. Likewise, the nearby Jersey City in New Jersey has a name of British roots too, being named after the Isle of Jersey in the English Channel. The city and the state were named after the island due to a former governor of the island playing a vital role in the land. Baltimore in Maryland has its name instead coming from somewhere in Ireland as opposed to Britain. The city's name is an ode to Cecil Calvert, the second Baron of Baltimore, with Baltimore originally being the name of a small village in Ireland. It was named after him as he held the charter for the colony of Maryland. And once again, Boston in Massachusetts is named after somewhere in England, specifically the town of Boston in Lincolnshire. The two share a name as many people from the original Boston settled in New England and founded this city too. Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, however, is not named after somewhere in Britain. The name instead comes from Greek roots. The founder of the state, William Penn, coined the name for this city from the Greek words of philos meaning loving and adelphos meaning brother. This is why the city is known as the City of Brotherly Love. It was dubbed this as Penn wanted his state to be free from religious intolerance and for people to care for one another, and this name encapsulated his ethos. Pittsburgh, which is in the same state, doesn't have a name of as loving origins. It is named yet again after another notable Brit, one William Pitt. Leaving the northeast behind, we arrive at Cleveland, Ohio. This is named after Moses Cleveland, the guy who founded it. His name featured an additional A, which was in the city's name for some time. It was removed in 1831 when it was decided that the extra A wasn't necessary for getting the point across. Also in Ohio we have Cincinnati. This city's name comes from one Lucius Quintius Cincinnatus, a hero from ancient Rome who saved the city of Rome in the 5th century BC, and then went back to go work on his farm. The city became named after him via the Society of Cincinnati, a group of military veterans who met in the city and had enough sway to change the city's name. As beforehand, it was called Louisantaville. Taking a detour north, we arrive at Detroit, Michigan. This is the first time we come across a name of French origin. Detroit was a French settlement initially, and the name comes from their word of Detroit, meaning straits, most likely in relation to the water in the land. Indianapolis in Indiana is of course just named after the state it is in, with the Greek polis suffix meaning city added to the end of it. From here we get to the third most popular city in the USA, and along with New York and some others on this list, one of the most well known, Chicago in Illinois. Despite what a beloved city is, the name isn't too pleasant, as in some way, shape or form, it relates to the bad smell which once dominated the area. The name is of native roots. It either comes from the Mesakawi word meaning place of wild onions or the Ojibwa word meaning place of skunks. Either way, garlic and skunks are not well known for their good smell. I'm sure Chicago doesn't smell too bad these days. But if we go south of Chicago, we arrive at one of my favorite cities in the USA, St. Louis in Missouri. This is once again a part of the USA with deep French roots. Unsurprisingly, Today, it is named after one of the many French kings who went by that name. In this case, it was Louis IX, who would go on to be canonized as St. Louis. He wasn't actually king when the city was founded. In fact, he died in 1270 AD. The city was founded way later after this. By the time the city was founded, France were on their 15th Louis. Carrying on in the Midwest, we have the city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. We once again have a native name here. It's thought to come from an Algonquin word which means the good land, most likely because the land the city was built on was good for farming and generally living on. And if you remember how Indianapolis got its name, then it's the same story for Minneapolis over in Minnesota. The city of Fargo can be found in North Dakota, and it is named after the American businessman of William Fargo, co-founder of Wells Fargo, which is a bank, I think? I'm not entirely sure. It just seems like one of those big ominous corporations. We're going to take a big western leap now and arrive in Seattle in Washington state. This city is named after a native chief who was called Seatalf. Portland, Oregon's name was decided in a coin toss. It was either going to be named after Portland in Maine or Boston in Massachusetts. Clearly the coin toss favored the place in Maine. Many of the popular city names in California come from Spanish roots, as the land was under Spanish rule for some time. Two notable ones, San Francisco and San Diego, are Spanish adaptations of St. Francis and St. Diego respectively. This is due to the strong religious beliefs of the Spanish at the time. Many names of Spanish origin in the Americas derive from Christian roots. California is also home to Los Angeles, the second most populated city in the state and the home of Hollywood. The city's name simply means the angels in Spanish. It comes from the settlement's original longer name of El Pueblo de la Reina de Los Angeles, which means the town of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels. I imagine the lady in this case is Mary. It's Mary like 99% of the time. Las Vegas in Nevada is also a name of Spanish origins. It's not as religious, however, as it simply means the meadow. This relates to the fact that this part of the desert was abundant in grass, thanks to a water supply in the land. I don't know how easy it is to find that grass today under all the neon lights and countless casinos. Salt Lake City in Utah doesn't have the most imaginative of names. The city is near a huge salt lake, like that's it. While it's not the most creative of etymologies, it's still a pretty unique name in its own way. Phoenix, Arizona's name directly relates to the mythical creatures. The name was suggested by one Philippa Duper, who felt the name was fitting with the idea of a new city rising out the ashes of the former people who used to live in the area, as the land Phoenix now stands in was once a big Native American settlement. Denver in Colorado, however, was simply named after their former governor of James Denver. He governed the former Kansas Territory, which at the time included parts of Colorado, including the area which contained modern Denver. Omaha in Nebraska takes its name directly from the Omaha Native people in the land. Their name simply means the upstream people, or the people against the flow, in relation to the part of the river they called home. The city of Albuquerque in New Mexico is well known for being the home of one Walter White, and Jimmy McGill more importantly. Better Call Saul is way better than Breaking Bad, don't fight me on that one. But this name is Spanish in origin, and relates to the town of Albuquerque in Spain. Texas, meanwhile, is a vast state, and has many notable cities within it. Three of those, however, all named directly after noteworthy people. Houston is named after General Sam Houston. Austin is named after Steve Austin, Stephen F. Austin, a highly influential figure in Texas history. And Dallas is named after someone? People aren't exactly sure who Dallas is named after. There have been various people in American history with the last name of Dallas who are worthy of having the city named after them, and we just aren't entirely sure on who exactly it is. Most people like to go with George M. Dallas, a former vice president of the US. New Orleans in Louisiana might be the city most linked with the USA's French past, and its name is a reference to the Old Orleans, a small settlement in France. Like New York, it wasn't named directly after the town, but instead the Duke of Orleans at the time. Nashville, Tennessee is once again named after someone, in this case one Francis Nash. The city was established as Fort Nashborough before it was expanded into an entire city, and the suffix got changed from borough to ville. Memphis, which is also in the state of Tennessee, borrowed its name from ancient Egypt. Yeah, in ancient Egypt there was also a city called Memphis. The name was used for this city as, like the one in Egypt, it too was built on the sides of a great river. In the case of Memphis, Egypt, it was the Nile, and in the case of Memphis, Tennessee, the Mississippi. Charlotte, North Carolina is named after a real Charlotte, Queen Charlotte Sophia, the wife of King George III of England, hence what is also known as the Queen City. Atlanta, Georgia has its name deriving from a railroad. The city was the terminal station of the Western Atlantic Railroad. As so much of the city was built around moving things to and from the Atlantic coast, it's understandable as to why it would have this name. But I also read it comes from either the nickname or middle name of a former governor's daughter, so maybe that's the actual correct answer. Florida is one of the most visited states in the USA, thanks to the good weather and the abundance of things to do in the land. One of its most iconic cities is Miami. The city is named after the nearby Miami River, with the river's name possibly coming from indigenous root meaning sweet water. But the main reason people go to Florida is because of the city of Orlando, and the many attractions the city has to offer. The city was supposedly named in honor of Orlando Reeves, a US soldier who was killed in the area. Orlando unto itself is simply the Spanish form of the name Roland. We ought to leave the continuous USA, however, and explore Anchorage in Alaska. The name simply comes from the fact that this city served as an anchorage spot for ships in the past. And we also have Honolulu in Hawaii, which simply comes from the land's native Hawaiian language and means calm port. Finally, I ought to explain the name of the USA's capital city, Washington, D.C. It's not actually in a state, but it's kind of its own thing. The name obviously comes from George Washington, the first president of this nation, which has gone on to produce many iconic and famous cities. There's a few I have visited, many more I would love to explore in the future, and one I'm going to very soon. Name Explained depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explained videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explained or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explained. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm Name Explained YT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explained to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.